We're looking at Federalist number 10, part 18. I already mentioned this book. I recommend that you read 2 chapters of this book, Making the American South by Daniel Walker Howe. If you come across it, it's real helpful. We spoke of faculties of the mind. Like one scholar says, it's divided into imagination, reason, passions, and will. And also you can look at it like reason, rationality, prudence, self-interest in a good way. You would do something wise and prudent for yourself. At the same time, you won't be hurting others. And then, of course, passions is always the negative part of it, which can create imbalance. So you need reason and prudence to keep the balance. And these are in all human beings. The wisest ones of us always keep reason number one in high priority, reason and wisdom and prudence, and try to keep passions at bay. Try to tame passions. So I had to stop in the middle of a paragraph. Remember, we got to a point that said he's dividing societies. He says because of different capacities, different talents of people, different faculties and use of those faculties differently in different people, will always have in society people like, he says here, a landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a moneyed interest, with many lesser interests, grow up of necessity in civilized nation and divide them into different classes, actuated by different sentiments and views. So Madison says, Madison, Publius, all of these guys are very realistic. They say in a society that is free, you're going to have people use their talents differently, and they will get to a point where some will get rich, some won't. Some will use the money to buy power, to do whatever they want to, and some don't. There's no way around it, okay? We're not having a society full of philosophers, and even if we could, okay, it's not going to work out. You're not going to make human beings into a robot or into robots. So he says it's guaranteed that you're going to have people with different incomes, different interests. And then a lot of times people, when they find that their income might be jeopardized by another group, they find people that have the same interest and also are in the same group as far as what actually puts the money in their pocket, that they are actually in the same interest group. So they'll find one another and they'll band together and they become a faction. And there's no way around it. He's being very realistic about it. And then he says the regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation and involves the spirit of party and faction in the necessary and ordinary operations of the government. In other words, we're going to establish a government that is going to acknowledge that there are many groups and there will be many groups with different interests, and these groups are going to clash because a lot of them think that they are in a zero-sum game. In other words, if somebody else makes a lot more money, they think like they are going to make less money. And because of that, they're going to influence the lawmakers. They're going to try to elect people to office that will support their programs. And Madison Publius says there is no way around it. If you're going to establish a government, a wise government, you have to accept this. He's realistic about human beings and the way human beings act in a society. Individually, they might be okay, but in a group, especially when it involves their interests, their money in their pocket, they are not going to be virtuous. They are not going to be, a lot of times, playing fair. They are not going to think of the society first and then their self-interest. It's not like that. He says human beings are always going to think of their self-interest. And you will see that Federalist number 1 and Federalist number 85, the first one and the last one, he always says that because of faction, because of passions that engulf these factions, there will always be a demagogue in the corner that is waiting to ride the wave of passions into power. So you have to always look out for demagogues, because demagogues always feed off of these passions that create these factions, these interests that create these factions. So this is one thing that separates the way this Constitution is written. 55 men got together. Not all of them stayed there, but all of them had different interests. And you can see it when you read the records of their conversation. What they said is that all of them are looking after their own interests, and they are going to have to compromise. So human nature is there. You'll see it. You'll see what they talk about, what they really, really are interested in. And because each one of them had to make sure that what went into this Constitution was not really bad for their state, this Constitution has come out to be a very good Constitution. So, and it's all because it is takes human nature as it is. It doesn't wish human nature to be what they want it to be. They say, no, this is what we've done during the course of history, and this is what human beings will do. They're always after their own self-interest first, regardless